Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. And those of y'all that are going to be watching this tomorrow or down the road, hope y'all are having a good day as well. I've been looking forward to this a while. According to my notes here, it looks like this is back as far back as 2022 here. Yeah, February of 2022 that I've been talking to our guest, Mr. Pete Counsel, I should say, first name Lieutenant Colonel Counsel Pete Armstrong. And his resume is long spanning. I literally just said I can't go through it all because I'll get tongue tied and ruin something. But what you need to know and what we're going to cover is he was at FOB1 at FOB1. He ran recon with Dakota, SC Dakota, SC Idaho. I believe he had transitioned there at the end and was actually then RT New Jersey. He also ran some Harry Hatchet Force missions. And then he worked at SOG headquarters, did some liaison bureau work, which is going to be interesting to hear about, and a whole lot of stuff in between that I'll mess up, and he'll get straight for us here in the chat. But we're going to go ahead and get started as usual, guys. As we go along, if y'all have questions, shoot them in, and we'll get to them at an appropriate moment. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Mr. Pete and let him introduce himself, and we'll get it going. Hope you're doing well, sir.
Thank you. I'm doing quite well, Bud, and appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and have others listen in and ask questions. It's been a long time ago. My relationship with SOG started in January 1967 and ended in May of 1971, someplace in the program, not always in Vietnam. It was a great unit to be a part of, and the history is well known throughout the world. I was actually on an airplane going from Turkey to Mongolia about 4 years ago, and this young Mongolian was sitting beside me and realized I had been in the Army, and he started talking to me about MACV-SOG, and that just blew my mind. So we are far more known than just in the U.S. There is, of course, the Brits who have put together a battle game about SOG. I've helped them a little bit with some dates and times and places. But as I say, it was a great unit, and it still remains the highlight of my career. There were a couple of pretty low points in there, but they weren't in SOG, so they were wrong.
And you were mentioning y'all are known worldwide, and not only are the British guys, Rob Graham and the guys doing great works with interviews and making the game, but there is a huge reenactment community that recreate specific teams, specific people. And actually, I've seen a few years in a row, some of the British guys have actually built a recreation of the launch site at Dak To, and would have teams and individuals working the launch site and a whole weekend of it. So y'all are known worldwide and loved. It's wild.
Well, let me give you a Dak To story real quick.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm there with the Bravo Company Hatchet Force. They borrowed us from FOB1, asked us to come down. They had a really bad mission, so we beefed them up a little bit. And I'm sitting there with my interpreter, and the interpreter says, "Roger's coming." I only knew one Roger, and I look around and I don't see Roger. And I said, "Where is he?" And he points. I said, I don't remember the interpreter's name now. I said, I'm sorry, I don't see Roger. And he points, and then I realized he's pointing at the airplane. I said, "No, we call that Covey." He says, "Whenever you talk to him, you call him Roger." Okay, and you're the interpreter. Let's go.
I love that. That's great. Speaking of that, we're kind of going all over the place. But while you mentioned Doc Toe, was that rare for an FOB1, a northern team, to be coming down so low, to be launching on missions out of Doc Toe like that?
Pretty rare. We were pretty small at that time. The three FOBs, all of them put together, didn't fill up a big airplane. So it wasn't completely unusual to borrow one to the other.
Wow. Okay.
So we had been borrowed to go down as a reaction force because Isler?
Was it Mr. George Isler?
Yeah. His recon team, and I think it was a beefed up team, had stirred up a real hornet's nest. And he eventually got the Medal of Honor for that action. But we came down and went in and tried to react and exploit what he had found. He hadn't found but a little bit of it. We found a whole lot more that we did not, the 100 of us could not handle.
Wow.
They ran us out of town big time.
Wow. Okay. So now that makes sense. Mr. George Sisler out of FOB2 and Mr. Leonard Tilley from RT Iowa, they go in. I think they, like you said, I think it was a recon team with a hatchet force reinforcing them. And I've had the distinct honor of speaking with Mr. Leonard Tilley, and he earned the DSC for his actions. And he said all hell broke loose. And from what I've heard, they literally landed on top of a I guess you'd say a command element.
That's my understanding. That wasn't the first time in SOG history that had happened.
No, and I'm sure it wasn't going to be the last, or it wasn't the last, as we will read and know later on in history. Wow, geez. Kind of shifting gears here back. We kind of jumped into SOG.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. We're here to listen to you and learn the history, sir. You are a Southern boy, are you not? Where were you born and raised?
I was born in North Carolina, eastern part of the state, a little town called Rocky Mount. It's about 80 miles north of Fort Bragg, maybe a little bit less. Right up what's now 95. 95 did not go through that town until 1975. The Rocky Mount was one of about 3 or 4 towns along the route that would not allow the construction to bypass them. So all that traffic went right down 301, which went right through the middle of Rocky Mount on down to Fort Bragg. But when I was in the 2nd grade, we moved to Baltimore. So I grew up in Baltimore until a little after high school, I joined the Army.
Oh, wow. Okay. Man, Rocky Mount. Now, this is going to be crazy. That almost sounds like Andy Griffith territory, like Mayberry. Did they have a Rocky Mount in Andy Griffith?
I think they mentioned it because back years ago, Rocky Mount, Wilson, which was just north of Rocky Mount, were kind of the barbecue capital of North Carolina. So they got mentioned in a lot of stuff.
Okay. And Mount Airy.
Lexington has kind of taken over that title since, but.
Wow. That's got a lot of buddies since starting to cover SOG and investigate and speak to you guys, the community. I've met a lot of good people out of North Carolina, not just veterans like yourself and such, but North Carolina is a lovely place. If I wasn't in Alabama and had the choice to live anywhere, North Carolina seems like a wonderful place.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you unfortunately second grade, that's gonna be probably pretty tough for you being a country boy used to the woods and getting to do whatever you want and have fun going to Baltimore. Did you did you play sports or anything, or what'd you get into while you were before the Army?
Well, I got into Boy Scouts primarily because my first few days in school in Baltimore, I had a couple of teachers, one in particular, who would ridicule my Southern accent in front of the class.
Jeez.
And I didn't realize at the time what my reaction was, but uh, thinking back on it now, I do understand exactly what I had done. I just shut up.
Close
You don't want
off.
to hear me talk, I'll shut up. So I sat there for 10 years and I learned and I took all the academic courses, but I graduated literally at the bottom of my class. I was 682 out of 689 students.
Shame on that lady or gentleman or whatever he.
It was at least one of each, and
Gee.
and yes, shame on them. But so I had very bad grades. I liked track, so I would get my grades up just for that semester, and I'd run track, and then I wouldn't study anymore. Well, I studied, I just wouldn't share it with the teachers.
I hate hearing that. I've had buddies that moved up north to Minnesota and stuff like that, and they had the same story. Not thinking we sound like uh, people like they depict on TV, but
Yeah.
evidently what that most people think we do. So to hell with
Well,
them.
there's a really excellent book by James Webb, former Secretary of the Navy, former, I think he was a senator, and I think he
Right?
was also a SEAL.
Oh, yeah.
Webb wrote a book called Born Fighting, and it is the story of the migration of Scots Irish descendants moving from the South to the North after World War II for economic advantage. And that is my story. When I read that book, I identified right down the line.
That's amazing. I've always looking for good books that especially veterans recommend that hit home, and I've just put that down on my Amazon wish list. My people are Scots Irish as well, out of Virginia, Coburn, Virginia,
Hmm.
and yeah, my dad had a tough time. He left Coburn and went to Chicago, and he was bullied quite a bit, and that's where he said he learned to handle himself. So
Yeah.
before, well, the Marine Corps, but before that, Chicago. You mentioned the Boy Scouts though, and if every time I hear the Boy Scouts and guys that stay in and really pursue it and are gung ho, for lack of a better term, and become an Eagle Scout, which is lack of another better term. It's the primo. It's like the SF of the Boy Scout Association. Where you were an Eagle Scout as well, weren't you?
I'm an Eagle Scout, and I earned it on the 11th of November, 1959. Easily remembered because it's Veterans Day, and that's a picture of my mom and dad at my Eagle Scout ceremony.
Wow, that that for folks that don't know, I'm pretty sure those of you that watch this channel are y'all are a very well educated bunch. But Eagle Scout, that I mean, that's heavy duty. That's did and speaking to guys that stayed in and were Eagle Scouts, they kind of felt like if they didn't have a father that was talking about the military or anything, they kind of felt like that was beginning to build a regimented system, and they kind of felt like they could take orders. They like being outside. Was that the beginning of you kind of wanting to join the military or on the military, or how did that come
Well,
about?
I think my dad's World War II service is what
Okay.
uh, had my interest in joining the military, but scouting gave me tools that I put to use in basic training that other basic training folks did not have.
I can imagine not.
And come May, I will celebrate my 75th year as a registered Boy Scout.
That's outstanding, and we need the scouts and young men need gentlemen like yourself and GWAT vets and just good men out there leading them. You know, I really feel bad for the generation coming up with all of these cell phones and what they have to deal with and all that. I really wish the Boy Scouts would get a resurgence among it. It could be really used today. You mentioned your father, and we kind of always do like to ask a little bit about family military history. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your dad's WW2?
So my dad worked, my whole male side of the family worked for the railroad.
Oh.
And that was an exempt occupation because it was
vital.
National critical support for the war effort. So he was not drafted until 1944. Already had 2 children and had been married the whole time of the war. And he trained on the East Coast and went to Europe as a part of one of Patton's armored divisions, the 14th, I believe it was. And he was in Europe for about 1.5 years, came down across France, into Germany, into Czechoslovakia. And I did not know it, thanks to my darling sister. I'll be nice to her. He was on occupation duty in Germany, literally about 10 miles out the front gate of Bad Tolz. And I spent almost 2 years at Bad Tolz and did not know that he had been there. And after I retired and came home, she gave me a postcard that she had had for all those years that showed the building where he had lived during his occupation duty. I could have literally, at that time, I could have run to it as a part of my morning PT.
Gosh, that's always interesting that we've heard from veterans that finding out their fathers were in the same area as they were later on in generations, and there you were literally within walking distance in the same area your father was at during WW2. I mean that. And a part of Patton's army. I mean, geez Louise, what a story. And did you not? You also had another family member in dangerous lines of work. Was he not a merchant marine as well?
Yeah, my uncle, who had started out with the railroad, my dad's older brother by a year or two, was in the merchant marine and got torpedoed 3 times. Fortunately, 2 of them were in the southern Atlantic, but 1 time in the North Atlantic, but he got picked up all 3 times.
Wow. Those merchant marines, I didn't really understand it until I started doing this and really paying attention more. But my God, the stories and the vital lifeline that they kept running through that danger, the wolf packs they were up against.
Absolutely.
I mean, geez Louise. So I can see now why you were very inspired and the military was knocking at the door, so to speak.
And of course, my younger brother and I were in Vietnam together at CCN.
That's going to come up. That we've got a little funny part that when I first started talking to you, that I actually sent a photo and it was not you, it is your brother, that I'm going to pull up that that I think people will think is pretty funny. So he's a little bit younger than you as well. Did y'all talk about joining? Did y'all plan to join together, or was he still too young?
He's 5.5 years younger than I. And I was already in the Army. he is really quite smart. He's passed away now. Agent Orange got him, geez, 18 years ago already.
Sorry to hear that, sir.
But again, he was a product of being from the South, and our dad passed away. I was already in the service. He, I believe, was in the 10th grade at the time, and they gave him absolutely no support, and he failed the 10th grade, although he had great grades, but absolutely no support from the school. So he had to repeat the 10th grade, went on to get a PhD and become a university professor. But, you know, he was just poor white trash from the South, so it didn't matter at our school.
And boy, two things, boy. The laugh that y'all two, I know y'all are too above it, but boy, the laugh y'all have at all of the people that made fun of y'all and said y'all were dumb white trash and all of that back in the day. And if y'all have not listened to, I can't remember, God rest his soul, the episode Colonel Mike Taylor was on of the SOGcast, but a gentleman, I believe it was a Colonel Donahue, that came up and is notorious in a bad way in SOG circles. That'll come up later. Your brother, actually, as far as I've heard, helped nip that issue in the bud, and get the final nail in the coffin, so to speak.
Yeah, he
much to his credit.
The MACV-SOG came up to FOB6 CCN to investigate Donahue, and my brother was working in the S1 shop and had all the records. So all the bogus stuff that Donahue had submitted on himself, the real records that my brother had access to and shared with the IG, proved him to be the liar that we all knew he was. Yeah.
And to finally get it like that, because I've heard some pretty wild stuff of what he had put himself in for and all of that. You know, I'll save that for people to listen to and the actual vets to say it. But yeah, what a piece of work, and another tip of the cap and feather in the cap of your younger brother, for being able to get that nipped in the bud, because he wasn't even SF qualified. I've heard he was armor and some other nonsense put in there.
Donahue was a piece of work himself. He was an enlisted guy who was very eager. So he went to OCS and he became a Medical Service Corps lieutenant, and that wasn't good enough for him. So he applied for West Point eventually and got admitted to West Point. Resigned his Medical Service Corps commission, got commissioned as an infantry lieutenant, and he actually commanded an MACV unit in Germany before coming to Vietnam, and he thought that he needed a combat command in order to go on to become a general. So he was not happy with being assigned to Special Forces, and that's why he doctored all the records and got all these bogus medals.
Lord of mercy. Lord of mercy. And I hate saying it, but that's not the first officer I've heard pulling guys aside and saying, hey, write me up for this and I'll, send it back your way. And thank God most of you guys are like, no, I'm not here for that. I didn't earn it, and I'm not here for medal hunting. God. To get that bad taste out of our mouth. You end up joining in 1962, is that correct?
January 62, yeah.
January of 1962. Wow.
So I graduated high school in June, and I already had a contract to work at Scout Camp and to go to college. So I started college and knew that's not what I wanted to do.
So many of you guys realize that. And then a lot of y'all, gosh, it seems like those of y'all that weren't college before inevitably all went back after, or if you stayed in the military, went to college while you were in the military. You know, I tell that to people all the time. Some people just aren't ready to immediately go to college right after high school. It's, you know, no fault of their own. You're better to wait till you're 20, 22, something like that, and go. That's what I did. So what 1962, a lot of stuff's going on. I remember during your great conversation with Tilt. I believe you first are at Fort Jackson, and then y'all are sent, instead of staying at Fort Jackson, maybe go to Fort Gordon for basic and AIT. Is that correct?
Correct. I was at Jackson for all the 3 days, got my initial issue, and they had just opened the Infantry Training Center at Fort Gordon. It had been MPs and Signal for years, but because of the Cold War, Berlin Wall and all that stuff, they opened the training center at Fort Gordon. They took an intact ADA unit, artillery unit, air defense artillery, from Korea and brought them to Fort Gordon and made them acting jacks and whatnot, and made them our cadre. And they put us through basic, and then I went to the initial leadership school between basic and AIT, and did infantry AIT also there at Fort Gordon.
Wow. And I imagine going back to your Scout and Eagle Scout, I imagine you're taking to this like a duck to water. You're doing pretty good and enjoying it.
Doing pretty good and enjoying it. Yep.
Excellent, excellent. And is it after AIT straight to jump school?
Straight to jump school. Put us on a bus and trucked us across Georgia from Fort Gordon to Fort Benning. Went to jump school, tested for SFQC in jump school, and did very well on it. There weren't a whole lot of privates in Special Forces training at that time.
Okay.
So I got to Special Forces training, and I'd been there for 2 weeks, and the company commander says, "You're not supposed to be here." And I didn't know that I had any say in it. I just got on the bus. So I went from there up to West Point Prep School for a couple of months, and again, I still was not ready to go to college.
Wow.
So,
How did it go from you not supposed to be in somewhere to you getting to go to West Point?
I was on orders and nobody knew it. So the orders, my AIT company commander had submitted me, and I don't remember any of the process other than I remember he asked me about it one time. So I got to Fort Bragg and they said, "No, you're supposed to be at Fort Belvoir." So I got on the train and went up to Fort Belvoir for a couple of months. Wanted to go back to SF, and they said, "No, you got to reapply." So I ended up in the 82nd and the 1st 503rd.
Ooh.
And that's really where my my Army started, because when I was in processing in the 03rd, somebody says, "Does anybody here type?" And I raised my hand. I said, "I can type a little bit." When I was in high school, I took chemistry and did not like it at all. I didn't care for the hard sciences.
Mm.
So I was the only guy in typing class. I said, I don't want to be here, and I'm not doing well, and I'd like to take typing because that's a skill I think I could use.
Oh, yeah.
So that paid off. I ended up in the S2 office. I needed a top secret clearance, and that top secret carried me through the next 30 years.
Holy cow. That's I mean, That is that pretty rare for you to be such a young guy early on getting a top secret clearance like that?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's pretty wild.
And I think being an Eagle Scout helped that a lot.
I mean, I can't overstate that when that's on your resume, people will be surprised how many people. I mean, look in these tier one groups and CIA ground branch guys. A lot of these dudes were Eagle Scouts. I kid you not.
Yeah.
During this point in time, did I remember correctly from one of our talks that President Kennedy, the Cuba invasion or something was kicking off with Cuba at the point?
The first 503rd was the battle group from the 82nd that deployed to Herbert Field, Florida, at midnight on the eve of Thanksgiving, 1962. We were sitting on the runway, had our loaded rifles, parachutes on already, and about 9 o'clock in the evening, Kennedy came on and said, "You can stand down. They've turned the ships around."
Wow. I can only imagine y'all's feeling. I imagine some of y'all were ready to go, but I imagine a bit of a relief that the potentiality of WW3 isn't about to kick off.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, each side had nukes and were prepared to use them.
And some of the documentaries now that have come out to where they release information on just how close it was, it's quite terrifying, actually. Yep.
Let me tell you a short war story about
please.
The 503rd. So I've become a second lieutenant, and I've already got about 80 jumps. Go to jump master school there at Fort Benning, become a master parachutist, number 2 in my jump master class, and go to Panama to a line infantry unit wearing a green beret. 1972, that was not the thing to do. So I was already at the bottom of the barrel, but I was a master parachutist. And one day they said, "Armstrong, you're going to be the DZSO." So we set it up. I'm running the show. The first helicopter comes over. It's a Huey model. And DZSO gives the jump commands because the jump master cannot see out of the airplane. I gave the jump commands. It was a successful drop. The battalion commander gets on the radio and says, "Armstrong, get off the radio. That's not the way we do it here." Second pass comes over. Everybody ends up in the water. One of the jumpers dies. Jump ends. Next day or two, there's an Article 32, and I report to the president of the board. The president of the board had been in the unit earlier, but was up at U.S. Army South Headquarters by then. A pretty seasoned major. And the entire battalion staff is sitting on his side of the table, ready to barbecue Armstrong. I report to the president of the board. The president of the board returns my salute and says, "Have a seat, Pete." And everybody looks at him and says, "What did he just say?" So Lieutenant Mark Lowry, the S2 of the 1st 503rd, is now Major Mark Lowry. And when the board was finished, everybody in the room except for Pete and Major Lowry got a letter of reprimand. They just absolutely violated every part of the SOP.
Wow. I can only imagine their feeling, thinking they're going in there and they're about to get rid of old Pete, and then they come out of there with a letter of reprimand, and not only you actually are smelling like a rose. I mean,
so all that did was make them go home and sharpen their teeth more. I mean, it still didn't make me popular, but
you had eyes in the back of your head. I'm sure you had to.
Yeah.
God, Man, it's crazy the way y'all were treated after Vietnam, the green beanies, and then oh, um so wow, with Cuba not kicking off, we luckily no nukes, WW3. What's next in line? Are you off to another duty station, or are you going to
Well,
Vietnam here?
I went back to, we all went back to Fort Bragg. That was November 1992, excuse me, 1962. In September of 1963, I got orders for Vietnam for the first tour. I was going to something called the Army Concept Team in Vietnam, and they needed an airborne qualified, top secret clearance gopher. Somebody with a clerical MOS, but that really wasn't the main part of the duties. So what my duties were supposed to be was to pair up with a lieutenant colonel, SF lieutenant colonel that was in the unit, and his job was to evaluate special forces in Vietnam. And they called off the evaluation. So I really didn't have much of a job. And after a couple of months, I got transferred out to the Airborne Brigade Advisory Detachment to the Vietnamese Airborne. And there were 29 of us there, 26 advisors, 2 Air Force FAC guys, a lieutenant colonel and a captain, and me. And my job was whatever they told me to do at the moment. And I carried a radio in the field. I drove the Jeep. I did some typing, but not much. I ran the classified documents. And if they thought at the end of the day that my duties were finished, they would take me home. If they didn't think they were finished, they would go home and let me fend for myself.
Jeez.
And there was a young Vietnamese sergeant, a northerner who had come down in 54 in the next office. And he and I started running together at night. And that's where I learned to speak Vietnamese, because he didn't speak a whole lot of English. I didn't speak a whole lot of French, but between the 3 languages, we got along. And he ended up becoming security guard for Nguyen Cao Ky. And I ended up meeting Key because of him. And there's a whole nother story about that. But my friend just passed away a couple of years ago, living in San Jose, and I went out to his funeral.
Well, first off, why on earth did they decide to cancel the program that y'all had been set upon?
They didn't share that with me.
Yeah, low man on the totem pole. Yeah.
So they were supposed to do SF, Hueys, communications in the jungle, M113s and M114s. I think the M114s kind of died because of what they saw, the restrictions of them in the jungle. 113s made out a little bit better. The aviation, they did a lot with the aviation. I was just telling a Army helicopter pilot the other day, one of the things we tested, not me, but that the unit tested, was mounting twin 50 caliber machine guns on a Huey B model. The first time they fired it, it stopped the aircraft in the air. They didn't continue that test.
Holy cow! I would love to see a photo of twin 50s on a Huey. I can't imagine what that. That's crazy. Is your, and you had a very interesting, and you kind of covered it with Tilden, and I just think historically it's very interesting. You and coming across some very important people. Two things. At how old are you at this point in time? First tour.
First tour was 20.
Jeez Louise.
Just turned 20. Yeah.
And is this the tour when you end up working in Saigon a little bit as well, and you end up seeing Madame Nu as she is effectively leaving Vietnam unknowingly for the last time?
I landed at Tan Son Nhut on the 3rd of October, 1962. And as we were walking, there were no jetways back in those days. As we were walking from the airplane to the terminal, we were halted, put into formation. Madame Nu and her daughter were leaving Vietnam to get on an airplane to come to the States and to France, trying to gin up support for the war. So we had to render honors, and she walked on and got on her airplane, and we then went on into the terminal.
Holy cow! That I mean, what a crazy historic moment. And guys, if y'all don't know about Madame Nu, y'all should look into her. She polarizing is putting it kindly. She was
Oh, Dragon Lady.
yeah, the Dragon Lady in the West and Tiger in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Quite the lady, but yeah, I mean, she was a character, shall we say?
She was the first lady of Vietnam because the president was not married, and she was the she was the sister-in-law of the president, married to the prime minister.
Okay, that was another thing that I never understood there. The DM, it wasn't a DM, wasn't married, and then the
Zim.
brother, and was the brother head of special forces or something, or airborne, or
No, he was a politician, and a third brother was the archbishop. They were
oh,
very devout Catholic.
covered all three bases there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Geez, that I mean
And
that's
years
amazing.
later, in 1971, I met Madame Nu's sister, who fell out of favor with the family in the early 60s, did not like what they were doing. She was married to a half French, half Vietnamese, and they came to Fayetteville, and her sister was teaching at what was then the MATA course, military advisor training. So
Wow.
we were going to night school together, and I met her then.
And she was teaching Vietnamese language and culture and
Yes.
such.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, outstanding. Jeez, that is see the even the non-SOG stuff. The amazing history here. Wow. Um, and then of course, I mean, it's kind of rammy here around the place, but you were actually there during one of, if not several of the ensuing coups, were you not?
I was there for several of the coups and every president that the country ever had.
Wow. I
The
mean,
first coup was the 1st of November, and the armor and airborne, I think it was the airborne who came down the street right in front of active headquarters, 177 Hai Street in Saigon, and converged on the presidential palace, which was not the big palace that everybody knows. It was a smaller palace just down the street from where we were working. And the U.S. Embassy was right around the corner from that on Ham Ni Street, certainly not the embassy that everybody knows today.
wow, man. I mean, that's some wild stuff. You literally seeing every president throughout the Vietnam War period like that. I mean, but I mean, they were turning over like hotcakes there for a
Well, they
while.
were.
Um, Did I had something put down on my note along this line, and I can't remember if this was the same time period, but did you have a friend, Mr. Tom Ward, who actually earned, I think, was it the first Distinguished Service Cross in Vietnam?
Yes, he was the assistant NCO at the first 503rd S2, and he left there and went shortly to 18th Airborne Corps, Promotions in the early 60s were really tough. And you had to be in a slot, and it was all local boards and stuff like that. So he didn't have any upward mobility in the 82nd. So he went over to Corps, and shortly after he got to Corps, he got orders to Vietnam, and he was in 4 Corps when he was an advisor to the 7th Armored, 7th ARVN Division, and they got routed really badly. And Tom earned the DSC in a bayonet battle, and he lost his life.
Jeez. Gosh. I'm glad we were able to share that, because there's so many Vietnam veterans that we've lost that their hopefully stories won't get lost to time, and unfortunately some of them have passed on and aren't able to share their stories themselves. So it's very nice to hear history like that and get it shared, because quite frankly, before I spoke to you, I didn't even know that, even with it being the first Distinguished Service Cross. So, wow, just wow. And is this around the time as well that you actually? I think you mentioned you're a gopher and you're carrying the radio and such, but you earned your combat infantryman badge around this time.
Actually, they built a 2-battalion task force, and we responded to the ambush that Tom's unit had gotten into in Long Island Province.
Wow.
August of 62, 63, 64. Yeah.
Wow. And it's I think, or at least in my notes, I may have messed up, but it looks like that's around the time you're getting pretty short and about to be heading back home to Vietnam.
That was August of 64. I extended. I'd already been home once on emergency leave because my dad had come down with lung cancer, and the only thing they knew how to do at that time was to cut. So I extended. I should have come home in October of 64 anyway, and I was just a few days into the extension when I got called home again, and he passed away in November.
Gosh. And man, so you get home and all of this is happening. And you've extended. Are you short on time? Are you still have enough time, or you still have more time on your contract? What are you planning on doing
my
now?
enlistment was up in January 65 when after my dad died. I did go back to Special Forces Training Group.
Okay.
And the first sergeant put me in the office because I needed to re-enlist before I could do anything. That was December of 64. So I was down to 30 days. And he called me in one day and said, look, when you re-enlist, I'm not going to let you go to training group. I'm going to keep you here in the office because you're doing a good job. And I was a Spec 5. And I said, no, I'm getting out of the Army. Thank you very much. And I got out of the Army, and myself and a buddy of mine, I had a car. So I drove him home to Oswego, New York. And the guy that he had worked for in the 82nd had been reassigned, made colonel and been reassigned to the Pentagon. So we stopped at the Pentagon to say hi to him. And I knocked on the door of somebody in recruiting there at the Pentagon and told him I really wanted to go back to Vietnam. I didn't want to get out of the Army, but I didn't want to be a clerk either. So he gave him the name of a guy, and he said, see this guy within 30 days and everything's cool. So I stayed out for about 3 weeks, went and looked up the guy and re-enlisted. And he was down in Texas. So I went back to Vietnam. I was back in Vietnam in May of '65.
Wow. And what was that? Was that the tour where you were top secret NCO and I Corps doing work?
Yes, because
Uh,
like I say, the clearance stayed with me throughout my career and gave me lots of opportunities.
with this being 65, and was this special forces or was this?
No, it's the I Corps headquarters of the Vietnamese Army,
Oh wow,
and we had a small team at the headquarters and advisors throughout the Corps.
wow. And were you just staying in contact with the different advisors, or what were you? What? Or
I
could you
was
even
I was
talk?
just managing the classified vault.
Wow. Okay. So, no, like carrying around classified papers with the handcuff on your
Yep,
wrist and the whole nine
yep,
yards.
did that. Yep.
Wow, heavy duty. I've I've got some interesting SOG photos of the CCS guys picking up the pay, and they've got their little Uzi in the Halliburton briefcase with them.
Yep.
Pretty funny. um, so was that that NCO job with the Vietnamese Army, was that an entire tour?
That was with I was part of MACV, so I was with the
Oh,
Americans, and I had a young captain who liked me and convinced me to go to OCS.
oh,
So I was there from May until March. Uh, Went to OCS again, back to Fort Belvoir, and they had only opened the engineer OCS. I had applied for infantry. They said, "Oh, we just need to get this school started, so you guys you can become infantry officers after you graduate because that's secondary role of engineers anyway." So I was in engineer OCS, and they announced one Friday afternoon, says, "You're all going to be engineers." We take that back. So I said, "No, that's I don't want to be an engineer. I don't math ain't my thing. Um, I want to leave." Says, "You can't leave. The only way you can leave prior to 7 weeks is to quit." I said, "No, that's not what you told me before." So I stayed for 2 more weeks and reminded them on that Friday afternoon. I said, "Well, my time here is up." Um, I can't describe to you how pissed that engineer colonel was.
oh God.
I said, this is what you told me. So that Friday afternoon, I left OCS, went over to the replacement depot. Some Spec 4 was in charge. He says, "Remember, just because you were acting E5s and getting E5 pay here in OCS, that no longer applies. Get in uniform and report back to me." So Staff Sergeant Armstrong reported back to him with his CIB and jump wings, and the guy told me I could take the weekend off.
And what became after your weekend off?
I went back to Fort Belvoir because it was so close to DC. I went to SF Branch and left, got to back to Fort Bragg in May in SF school.
Holy cow. And so you've managed to get back into to go through the Q course now, the full Q
Right.
course. Okay, wow.
And because I
Okay.
was staff sergeant, I was in the O&I.
Operations and intelligence.
Right. I had to be a
Excellent.
staff sergeant to do that.
Quite a few of the SOG gentlemen I know went to O&I school
Right.
or O&I. That's interesting work from the sound of it. And how does the Q course go for you? Any problems? Do you
Oh
kind
no,
of skirt on through and?
went well,
Well,
and graduated in November. Got assigned a third group,
oh,
and I called Billy Alexander and I said, "Look, everybody else from my class is going to Vietnam, and I volunteered. and I end up in third group. She said, well, that was because you'd already been to Vietnam, so they had to assign you someplace, but you're already on orders to go back to Vietnam. So I was in third group for less than 2 months, and went basically on the same airplane as everybody else anyway, back to Vietnam. And that's when I went into SOG in January of '67.
Wow. Okay, man, that's a great name to hear, Miss Billie Alexander. We love hearing y'all's stories about her, and she loved the heck out of you guys, and would
She
do
did.
all she can for you guys from the sounds of it. Weirdly enough, her son was watching one of these interviews and popped in just as a veteran was talking about Miss Billie, and we've got him in the online Facebook group, and he's in touch with everybody, which is pretty cool.
I didn't realize she had a son, but that's good to know.
Did not either. And yeah, he's, I think, 40, 50, so he's up there. But yeah, very cool to get him in touch with you guys to let him talk and hear more about his mother. Excuse me. And third group at this time was it at Fort Bragg, or where was?
Yeah, we had at that time we had third, sixth, seventh at Bragg, and I think first was in Germany, eighth was in Panama, fifth was in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
There may have been more elsewhere. I don't. But third, sixth, and seventh were definitely at Bragg.
That's always keeping up with when they leave where and where they were at. Always gives me problems, but I'm learning. And
then of course third and sixth folded the flag, and then third came back years later.
Wow. Okay. With you going, we always ask the guys, and especially with you being so early on here, and guys, I'm seeing your questions come in. We're about to hit them since we're hitting SOG. Did you know anything about the special projects at this time? Had you heard any mumblings or any rumor mills?
In '64, we had a guy in the Airborne Brigade Advisor Detachment. He was actually the deputy, a guy by the name of Daniel Lord Baldwin III. He was a senior major, 2 combat jump veteran from Korea, and he was pulled out of the advisor detachment to help start SOG. So wow. I knew it was happening.
Dang. So he was one of I mean, they didn't do plank holders, but he was one of the first guys then. Wow.
Right.
That's crazy. And what did you say his name was?
Daniel Lord Baldwin III.
Daniel Lord Baldwin III. I'll be
retired
doing
as a full colonel and passed away a number of years ago. I think his last assignment was out at Fort Carson in reserve components, I believe. But
wow, fantastic! I will be looking into him. And I forgot I had a photo of your Canto tour right here.
That's when we were following
Mito,
up on
not Canto. I'm sorry.
Long Island Province, near Mito.
Mito. Wow, yeah. My Vietnamese pronunciation is garbage. I apologize, everyone. Humping the radio, I can see there.
Yeah.
Come on, mouse, don't film.
And that dark line right below my crotch was from the rice paddies. We were walking through rice paddies all day long, so my pants were wet from just below my crotch down to my feet.
Yikes! Okay, so you SF third group, you get orders to Vietnam, see Miss Billie Alexander. Now, when you get there, I know Billy was mentioned at one point. Are you assigned to originally go to an A camp, or you immediately find your way into the projects before you're?
Billy had recruited a group of us at Fort Bragg, and we went straight from Fort Bragg to SOG.
Wow. Now that's very interesting. I think that is definitely a first for us as well. That's really really interesting. Well, no,
All on the same airplane.
was it all third group guys that
No,
just a mix
no.
of wow.
It was all guys from the NCO club.
That is awesome. Wow, the Billy Wall legend. Where when you get there or after I should say you're recruited and you land and such. Where is your first home base, shall we say?
So they recruited us and processed us at Nha Trang at group headquarters. Got assigned to FOB1, but before we went to our various FOBs, we went to Cam Duck for 1-0 training. Cam
Wow.
Duck was in 2 Corps. I think a little bit north of Dak To, but I don't remember exactly where. It's about 12 miles east of the Lao border.
And I'm trying to think. I don't think we've had the honor to speak with anybody that ever worked or was even stationed at Cam Duck. I've of course learned, as you said early on, they didn't have the 1-0 school per se yet, and it was kind of held there. What was Cam Duck like? It sounds like it was a nasty, nasty place.
We had a kitchen cat that was afraid to go outside because the rats were attacking him. It was a nasty place. It was cold. It was up in the mountains. It was in the 30s. We had mosquito netting to keep the rats off at night. It was a very quiet place. In fact, I told you about Madame Nu's sister. Zim had a hunting lodge up in that area, and that's the way her sister had met her future husband, because he was the hunting guide for Zim and the palace party up in those mountains. It was not a very hot zone, but it became a hot zone. It got overrun really, really badly in 68 or 69. A terrible battle, and we gave up the camp, got forced out.
Wow. And there's a great map that our viewer Daniel made us. He's great
Mhm.
about helping me out with maps and laying everything out. And yeah, from all accounts, I mean the NVA was and VC were right there on y'all. I mean, pretty
Yeah.
much the whole time.
And it had the worst leeches any place I'd ever been in Vietnam. I mean, they were just
Jeez.
terrible.
Wow, that's crazy, and especially you being down in the Delta area and down there, and it being Cam Duck having the worst. That's saying something.
Yeah.
That is bad. Wow. Um, did so? Were you there? Were you guys launching missions out of Cam Duck, or were you just there for a short period to get introduced, so to speak? Or
Uh, they were launching missions out of Cam Duck. I never did, but they did use it as a launch site as well.
wow.
Like I say, it was only 10 or 12 miles from the border.
And is while you were at Cam Duck, is that where you mentioned your first Hatchet Force mission, or is that when you have
Well,
already transferred to FOB1?
yeah, when we finished at Cam Duck, we went up to FOB1, and I was assigned to B Company Hatchet Force. There was one captain and myself, and we launched almost immediately after I got there.
Wow. At Cam Duck, were you on a team, or was there a team or a Hatchet Force there, or what were you doing there? Just
At Cam Duck, we were just doing orientation for
okay.
the
Wow.
mission team.
Man, that is very, very interesting. Wow. And so
But
you moved.
while we were there, we were running ambush patrols, practice. It was a combat zone, so it wasn't really practice, but it wasn't under nearly the pressure we would get in Laos.
kind of like the 5th group set up at Monterey later on, the combat orientation course kind of sounding, but for SOG.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
And
we actually established the 1-0 school at Longtime, which was basically the same thing.
And what a very interesting place Camp Longtime is. Still love getting new 1-0 class photos all the time, and learning about projects and some of these books that although, as I heard from you, there's some projects we'll never probably hear about that were going on out of there. And so we now transition from Cam Duck to FOB1 at FUBI, and you were in the B Company Hatchet Forces. And you immediately launch, and that is that first hairy mission that you were talking about early on. And did you mesh pretty well with the guys, both American and your troops? How'd that go with your first interaction?
That went well. Yeah, it went well. I knew a couple of the guys that were already there, and that was my 4th tour in Vietnam, so I already spoke Vietnamese pretty well.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry, 3rd tour. So I got along with the Vietnamese well.
Were the Hatchet Force members that you were working with, were they Vietnamese, all Vietnamese?
Technically, they were not supposed to be. The Vietnamese were subject to service in the Vietnamese Army. So a combination of Vietnamese and Chinese Nungs.
Ooh,
we didn't,
wow.
To the best of my knowledge, we didn't have any mountain yards at Phu
Oh, wow. Okay. Nungs, both that's a storied group of fighters for SOG. Geez, what fighters? Wow. And people are interested, especially early on. What's your loadout, and are you using a M16? What's it like for a Hatchet Force man in '67?
So they issued us carbines. We had M16s and CAR 15s at Phu that were, and Swedish Ks that were available to us. I think at Cam Duck, I carried the carbine, but then when I got to Phu itself, I was able to swap it for an M16 and then for a CAR 15 shortly after that.
Oh, wow. So you were able to get a CAR 15 in '67?
Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. I didn't honestly, I always hear different things. I didn't even know the specifics of when y'all first got them. That's really cool. And did you have any problems with it? We hear some people say they preferred the 16 or this or that or what have you. Did you enjoy it, and it worked quite well for you?
It did work well. We did not have 30-round magazines yet.
Oh, yeah.
So we had 9mm pistols issued to us instead of 45s. We had SOG Randalls issued to us, sterile, no markings. And we had a variety of uniforms, none of which we wore any patches on, or no ID or anything. Jungle boots, but there were also some almost like tennis shoes with different kind of tread on them. There was an operation in Okinawa that ran all the way through with SOG that was coming up with ideas about equipment for us and manufacturing it and getting it to us.
Mr. Ben Baker and the CISO group,
exactly.
I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, they definitely cooked up some really cool stuff.
Yep.
Oh, we've got two questions here. Did you mentioned 9mm? Were they Browning 9
Yeah,
millimeters?
yeah.
Oh wow, they were issuing you guys Brownings off the.
Technically, they were giving them to us,
Wow.
and they were unaccounted. And I think it was all across fifth group. Our supply system all came from the CIA. So none of it was on the Army's books.
Wow, man. At SOG's goodies and all the stuff y'all got that's every young man's dream.
Yeah.
One question was about watches. Were you issued a Seiko wristwatch upon your arrival into SOG with a wrist compass on the wrist?
No.
Uh,
I think what we were issued was the old Timex with the brown face and nylon strap. And we did not have wrist compasses at that time.
mhm. Yeah.
Later,
So yeah.
but not then.
Mhm. And they were curious. Did you ever work with Mr. Dick Thompson that ran out of CCN?
I don't
He
recall the
was
name, but
I think he
maybe.
was a little bit later than you. 69 onwards, when he
Well,
was around.
I got back there in '69, so it was my tour in '69 and '70 was strange, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yes, sir. um, oh, I completely missed that, and I hate I did that. What was your advisory attachment like back? I hate to go back, but what was that like advising on your first couple of tours?
I was not an advisor, so the people who were 63, 64 with the airborne, the vast majority of those guys made general officer. They were all hot shots, handpicked. Um, the first sergeant, like I say, I was the gopher. When I got there, the first sergeant was an old soldier, and he was a decent guy, and he was a good NCO, and he tried developing me. He rotated, and the next guy who came in was a sergeant first class with a very, very bad attitude, and I completely understood it. Sergeant First Class Campisi had been Major Campisi, the headquarters commandant of the 82nd Airborne Division, and at 17 years and some months service, they decided to revert him rather than give him a couple more months and make him retirement eligible as an officer. So he came to the 82nd as a sergeant first class, and 90% of the officers had come out of the 82nd. So he had outranked them in the 82nd. He wasn't happy.
I can see why.
I could see why, but it didn't make me happy either. So
No, no. Probably
he
not a
had
pleasant man to be around at that time.
he had a DSC, already 2 combat infantry badges, so he got his 3rd one in Vietnam.
Jeez. God almighty.
Yeah. So I had a great relationship with the Vietnamese. Not so much of a great relationship with the Americans. The next youngest American was the medical platoon advisor, and he was a staff sergeant, 10 years older than I was.
Wow. Yeah, that would be tough. Rank wise, age wise, that's tough business there.
The one guy that I did have a good relationship with was Al Combs, and Al Combs had already been in Vietnam a number of years. He had 5 combat jumps with the Vietnamese. He was married to a French Vietnamese, had a couple of children, and Al had several Purple Hearts, but He and his wife and their two small children were walking into the Mekong restaurant in May or June of 1965 when the VC popped a claymore behind them, killed Al and his wife. The two girls got hurt because the parents were holding them and fell on them. And then some SF colonel adopted them and took them back to Fort Bragg.
Wow. God. Boy, I the stories like that in the cities, like that, the bombings. I imagine there's a lot of sad stories like that. Wow, that is just terrible to hear. God. What at that point in time? What did you think of the Vietnamese? You were getting along with them. What did you think of them as soldiers? Were the ones you came across pretty good fighting soldiers?
Yeah, the airborne were excellent soldiers.
Mm.
Very aggressive.
Oh yeah, that's usually every time I speak to a vet that was advising or around the Vietnamese airborne detachments. They always said that you could count on those guys. They were the real deal.
So the brigade commander of the Vietnamese, at that time it was a brigade, not a division. It later became a division. The brigade commander was a colonel by the name of Cao Van Vinh. And actually my Vietnamese airborne certificate is signed by him. He's the one who led the coup in 1963, and he ended up becoming the chief of staff of the Vietnamese military.
Wow. There again,
4-star.
history and that. Wow, that is crazy. And yeah, this one will be interesting, or you could probably answer it both. Uniforms for SOG. What were the variety of uniforms, especially early on, and then I guess you could elaborate when you came back. What the differences were.
There were a variety of uniforms that were available. I liked sterile jungle fatigues and jungle boots. That picture you showed earlier, I think, with the RT New Jersey. What you see is what I got. Flop hat, sterile fatigues. You can see a t-shirt. There were no drawers and no socks. A Vietnamese sergeant told me years earlier, so if you want to keep your socks and your underwear dry, leave it at home.
Wow.
But I'll tell you, 3 or 4 weeks in jungle boots with no socks, you just get a new pair of jungle boots. They got pretty rank.
I can only imagine. I bet you could smell those puppies from outside the hooch.
Yeah.
And it comes on a lot. The question about uniforms, tiger stripes. We know the Mike Force use them. We see you guys wearing them on the compound, but y'all didn't really much care for them in the bush, did y'all?
Well, because the NVA were not wearing tiger stripes in the bush, so the
Stand out like a sore thumb.
exactly just the sterile jungle fatigues to me just kind of matched the jungle better.
I think I've got here is Idaho, and I think y'all have got some sterile. Well, no, I think you may have a badge on theirs, but there's
Well, we were in garrison there.
And I guess I'm getting ahead. Well, I'll save that because I think I am getting ahead of myself. We were hatchet forces. Wait, did I skip any questions? Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I did. Your ammo pouches. We noticed you had the ammo canteen pouches.
Yeah.
Did you ever attempt the BAR belt, or did
Yeah.
you? What was your tried and true method that you preferred?
BAR belt worked well with 20-round magazines. And that's what I had carried earlier on Idaho. But the picture there of New Jersey was later on we had 30 round magazines. So they fit better into canteen pouches.
Did the 30s, you mean the 30 round mags you got later in 69?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we noticed in the 71 time frame, it seems like more so than earlier on. I guess guys were trying different things, war winding down, I'm not sure. Guys starting to do the SKS or AK chest rigs. Did you ever see that early on in SOG?
Not early on. I did see it later, and by then I was so comfortable using what I had grown up with, literally. So
don't break the good mojo.
Yeah.
Excellent. What were that's an interesting physical ability. People are asking how y'all kept in shape, running through the jungle and such. What was the average routine for a team to keep in physical shape?
Drinking.
Shooting and drinking.
We had a couple of guys that were into PT, and they'd go off run by themselves and whatnot. But there was no organized PT. There was sometimes there'd be an impromptu volleyball game at lunch or something like that. But
that's wild. Versus y'all back in the day, and then the guys today looking like Viking warriors with their sleeve tattoos and the whole line.
And to back up on that, Bud, when I got to training group in '62, I asked about PT, and I think it was a staff sergeant in the barracks says, "We don't do PT. One day the company commander is going to tell you to do something, and you better be able to do it."
Wow! So it's on you.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, SF in the earlier day. Well, as a whole, but those early days, boy, that sounds like there were some real customers in there.
I don't remember doing organized unit PT in SF as an enlisted guy, ever.
That's wild. Uh-oh. I hope his phone did not go dead, or he may have gotten a phone call. We'll see. Gosh, we've still got like 3 more jobs to cover. And a whole nother recon team to cover. Yeah, it didn't seem, like I said, with the AK vests, they didn't seem like they were doing the RPDs early on. 69 for sure. You started seeing them around. You with us, sir? Let me get my phone in case. Apologize, guys. We'll hold off on just a second and see if he pops. He's probably going to retry and pop back on. Yeah, I mean, we still got to talk about, he was a liaison to the King Bees and was at the launch site working with the King Bees, launching for teams, retrieving teams every day there for a while as well. God, I mean, he stayed in until like Desert Storm as well. He was in Korea at the DMZ. He was with the 82nd again, running Davy Crockett systems. Yeah, I mean, oh, there he is.
And then
we lost you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I completely forgot where we were. I guess we will trudge along here.
I just answered the question about doing no
PT. Yeah, that's correct. Yes, sir. Okay, I just showed ST Idaho as they were known in that day and age. ST versus RT. I believe the RT came in '68 when the CNCs transitioned.
Well, no, it was there first, and then the new CNC commander, it was recon team, and then he said, no, we got more than just enough to do recon. We'll call them spike teams.
Wow, I'm sure y'all were enjoying that name all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Spike, it sounds it's like y'all are going out there to hunt and get into it more so than reconning.
that was his idea.
Whew. Uh,
And
um,
nobody was going to argue with Harold Rose because he had 3 CIBs and 5 combat jumps.
wow, Harold Rose. Wow. Um,
Lieutenant colonel, never got promoted to full colonel. The Army told him because he didn't have any Pentagon time. All he had was
um,
combat time.
and this is at FOB1. You're commander at FOB1?
He, commander at uh,
CCN?
CNC in Da Nang at Monkey Mountain,
Oh, wow.
Tensol. Mm-hmm.
Didn't you? Okay. Um, and we've spoken about your hatchet force time. I think you end up running another operation, which is quite interesting. You covered that with Tilt, and unfortunately, there is an American, Mr. Carpenter, who is KIA, as y'all are going in to look for another veteran, and Frank Borgia, I believe, is the
Yes,
man. And as far as I know, both men are still MIA. I'm not 100% sure on that.
correct.
But you covered that in great detail, so we won't get into that, or because we're already an hour and a half in. I told you I wouldn't
Yeah,
hold you
and
that long.
technically both of those guys are KIA, body not recovered. I don't know if they
Then,
specify that, but they were definitely both KIA. There was no question.
yeah, and that, as I've learned here recently, that was a huge issue of classifying men when they did not come back, played a
Right.
big part in things. So when do you officially go from the hatchet forces into the recon element, and start with Idaho or Dakota, maybe?
Started with Idaho,
Idaho.
probably about the 1st of April, because I spent, I think it was 15 days out of March between the 2 operations. I was on the ground for 15 days. Uh, then went to Idaho with uh,
Mr.
Rufus Smith.
Bustamante.
Rufus went home. Bustamante was on Dakota. Bustamante transferred to 2 Corps Mike Force. So I went quickly from 1-0 of Idaho to 1-0 of Dakota. And I'm not sure why they did that, but there might have been somebody else with me on Idaho that took over. I don't remember.
Wow. And there's a great photo of Mr. Manny being decorated, and there's Larry
Yeah.
Manus back there. And yeah, Mr. Bustamante's nephew, or it might be his grandson, watches the show. So that'll be, I hope he sees this. He'll probably want me to get you in touch with him. That's Major Rybat, I think.
Yeah.
But
Distinguished Service Cross at, I think it was Khartoum.
yes, sir.
The Mike Force.
Immediately leaving SOG and the craziness he's getting into there, and goes into the Mike Force, and then the first thing is a full scale, I think, overrunning of the base, or the fire base that he's at, or they're
Right.
at. Gosh, very good. He was a good man, good in the woods, as y'all
Yeah.
would say. So Idaho, Dakota, and is there doesn't sound like there was much time. Were you on the ground very much with Idaho before
I think I
transfer?
did one mission with each.
One mission with each. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and at this point in time, what is it like for a 1-0 getting ready when you get, shall we say, a notice? There's a target. What's that like for you?
I don't recall an isolation area at Fubai. So we just got the mission and prepped up for it.
Is there at this point in time already? Do y'all have a lengthy folder, visual recon notes, prior engagement, so to speak, to where y'all can go back and look through and lay out what needs to be laid out?
No, we were still pretty much developing the area.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Wow.
And I guess maybe I was on Dakota. We got a bright light mission. Uh, uh, a Navy or Air Force guy, I think he was, went down up north. And I know I was going to carry the radio on the team. I'm not sure who the team leader was, but thankfully thankfully for us, the North Vietnamese got him before we could scramble to get to him, and they held him captive from 67 until 73.
Jeez. He came home during homecoming.
He did. And the reason I say luckily is because they gave us the map as to where he was on a 1 to 50. And on the right side of the 1 to 50 was a river. So I asked for the adjoining map sheet. And on the right side of that map sheet were the city limits of Hanoi.
Holy cow! I
He
can
was
see
way up
very.
north.
It's wow, wow, wow. Hang on one second. I need to grab something. I apologize, everyone.
Okay.
Jeez Louise.
So I had a very short, after that, that was my last operational thing at FOB1. After that, for a very short stint, I was in the S2
right here.
for only a couple of weeks, and then I moved down to CNC as the CNC S2 NCO.
Sorry about that, everybody. Someone misplaced some keys, and I inevitably catch flack. Okay. Thank you for keeping it going, sir. You're a professional while I was getting yelled at. Okay, and I heard you had just mentioned you had ended running recon at FOB1 or were in the process. And did you end up, while you were at FOB1, do you end up extending, or are you having to go back stateside, or
No,
what?
I was only 5 months into the tour.
Okay.
So I went down to Camp Tensal CNC headquarters as the S2 NCO. Debriefing all the teams was my primary job as they came out.
That's cool.
And I was there until probably about November, December, and extended to go from there down to Liaison Bureau.
These are the two that are very interesting, and some of guys, y'all can hear some of his combat exploits in Tilt's podcast, where he's calling in air and they're stuck in the weather, and it is quite crazy. But well, we're about to get into some very interesting history here that is not covered very often SOG wise. So you mentioned, and we were talking about Camp Tenshaw offline, and what's very interesting, and I didn't know it till on into learning about SOG, that the conglomeration of the FOBs, there was a head FOB, and like you just said, you were getting all of the teams debriefs and debriefing all of the teams from the central HQ locations.
Right.
And what would that entail? Are you getting it on a daily basis through paper? Or are you getting it teletyped out, sent up, or you literally meeting teams?
They pull a team out. They would do the initial debrief at the FOB. They would fly down, usually on the King Bee, to Tensal. I would do a lengthy debrief and write it up, and that's what went to SOG headquarters. And if they if SOG headquarters determined that they wanted to go into more depth, they would call the team down to Saigon, or at least the 10 and 11.
Wow. Okay. And I've always been curious about this when you're doing a mission debrief in such a manner like this, to where they've actually come to you and you're putting this down for, we don't have them now, but would this actually list RT so and so 10 so and so, or was it just it had the whole Megillah?
Yeah. And
wow.
And then the names of the Americans, then sometimes depending on who was there, the names of the Vietnamese, at least the numbers, what happened, who got wounded, etc., what they saw. It was just a running narrative of the entire 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, however long it lasted.
And are these debriefs as well? Are you getting to see photographs that teams are taking in the operations? Are these going into your debriefs as well?
I didn't get to see the photos because they were still processing them, and they were in and out of me before the photos had been finished.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a running machine there. I mean, people, as you get deeper, the SOG was a many tentacled machine and organism, other than just the recon teams and long time in the FOBs, man. A lot of stuff. Okay, and so that is what you're doing for the rest of your time. You're debriefing all of the teams out of the FOBs, and once you're done at Camp Tenshaw and maybe this tour, do you stay, or is this at the point in time where you go stateside again?
So I extended in December of '67, and I went on extension leave, and my absence was replaced by the North Vietnamese Army in South Vietnam, Tet of '68. So I was on extension leave, Tet of '68.
Wow. Did you see that on the news? And like, good Lord, I was literally just there.
Well, my good friend, the sergeant from the Airborne, I had gone to several countries on extension leave, and he says, "Why don't you come and join me and Sergeant Kim for dinner at Tet?" So I was in Thailand, and I flew back into Vietnam on leave. And I was about 2 blocks from the front gate of Tan Son Nhut without a weapon, in civilian clothes.
Wow. And wasn't Tan Son Nhut one of the first big blow-ups and places they hit to kick Tet off?
Yeah, they sort of greeted Tet with rockets and all that stuff. Yes.
Civilian clothes and no weapons down there eating. Wow. What did you do? Did you book it back to HQ or
well, I was supposed to start work at Liaison Bureau, so it took a couple of days to get out there, and it wasn't very far from where I was eating dinner, so I was able to get back into the fold.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's, you definitely won't ever forget Tet. That's another wild one. And another interesting aspect, the Liaison Bureau, where I'm trying to get another veteran who was at a CCS that ended up at the Liaison Bureau to speak with us a little bit about it as well. But could you tell us, then Lieutenant, or it may have been a captain by then, Troy Gilly?
No. Okay, so
he was close with J. Frank Burkhart.
Yeah, I knew Burkhart.
Yep. Could you tell? Oh, did I interrupt? I'm sorry. Were you about to?
No.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about what exactly? Because the Liaison Bureau is another one of those names that doesn't really allude to anything. Could you let us know what y'all were doing?
So there were four of us, Captain, Sergeant First Class Daniels, and two staff sergeants, and I'm blanking on the other guy's name. We knew each other for years. Um, so our job, our primary job, was to recruit for SOG, because like I said earlier, the Vietnamese were not technically supposed to join. They were supposed to join the Vietnamese army. So we ran around the country looking for people. I spent a lot of time in the Delta. Right after Tet, there were a number of opportunities to fill spaces in the unit, especially up at FOB1, because the Nungs were living in Hue with their families, and the Vietnamese and Nungs don't really get along anyway. So the Vietnamese ratted them out to the NVA, and a lot of them got killed up there. So we were trying to refill those ranks. And in doing so, I was way down south in the Delta and ran into a Cambodian who spoke a lot of French and wanted to come into Vietnam to get away from the NVA. And the South Vietnamese were giving him a hard time, but he wanted to bring his Cambodian battalion and work for SOG. So that was an interesting couple of months of working with them. Finally, ultimately got him out. And
holy cow. I mean, so you literally in one swoop, you got an entire Cambo battalion into
about 150 people.
Wow. That's that is just crazy. And y'all didn't necessarily per se do because that would happen on base, but I thought I remember either Mr. Troy or one of the guys saying that there were sectors or sector bases or whatever, to where y'all would send the initial gets or recruits and kind of, I guess, indoctrinate them and kind of train them or see what they're worth there at the beginning before they would be shipped off to an FOB. Is that correct?
Theoretically, but I shipped people directly into the field on more than one occasion. I know that.
And I mean, to be fair, you know, a lot of these guys not having paperwork and everything, or finding you if they may have left earlier on or what have you. I mean, a lot of these guys, especially later on, 69, 70, they had, you know, 3 years with at an A camp, maybe 2 years with the Mike forces, and then found their way into SOG and served another few years. And I mean, these guys had a lot of experience, some of them.
Yes. The picture of Idaho you showed earlier, guy with the sunglasses.
Oh, yes. That's a question I forgot.
Yeah, Hip. Hip was on Idaho for years. So
that's the Hip that Tilt always talks about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And his trademark sunglasses right there.
And Hip and I, or Tilt and I, were at Hip's funeral in Houston a few years back.
Wow. So he made it out to Houston.
Oh, he made it out and lived a long life. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Died of heart disease.
Oh, man. Well, is the other Vietnamese, was there a cowboy on this team that
yeah, I'm not sure which one he was now, but
yeah. Okay, wow. So a cowboy and Hip. Wow, man. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one of the questions that slipped my mind earlier, was the gentleman in the sunglasses.
And someplace on a military feed just a few days ago, they threw up a picture, and it was Idaho and Hip in his sunglasses. They didn't identify it or anything, but I recognized Tilt was in the picture.
That's great. It's once and well, you serving with them, you can immediately spot them. But there's once you start looking at pictures, you can kind of tell guys how they stand or what they look like in profile and all of that. And help, of course, with those sunglasses, you
Yeah.
gonna know that's him. um, Not to backtrack. What was the average age of some of the Indige SOG men at that point in time, or run the gambit of old and young?
Yeah. Some of them quite young. Some of them have been around for a few years. Yep.
Wow. And so when you at the liaison bureau, I transitioning here. Last question. You'd get the guys, and you said they'd go straight to an FOB, or they do training or what have you. Would there be, say, like a quota to where, hey, the first guy that comes in, you're feeding this FOB, or did you have a system for sending guys
Yeah.
to a specific place?
I didn't get involved in that end of it, so
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Just curious. Just curious.
I told you about the Cambo. So this is right after TET. So I'm working February, March, April. I'm way down south, and it was time to go back to Saigon, and the airplane wasn't ready to go. So I hitchhiked from way down south back to Saigon. I just went out on the road in uniform with a car 15 and a briefcase full of money. And I literally hitchhiked. Vietnamese civilian, Vietnamese military, American military. The last vehicle, the last convoy I was with was an American military that was going off to Long Tan. So he dropped me someplace south of Saigon city limits. And I walked into town, and I don't remember the rocket holes in the sides of the buildings when I had left a week or so ago. They had what they called Tet 2, the first week of May. So my Vietnamese buddy that from 1963, his brother-in-law was a district police major in Saigon, also an airborne brigade veteran. He was the first vehicle that came up, and he said, "Get in the vehicle. These dead bodies along the street are here for a reason." So the Saigon had been probed again while I was gone, and I didn't even know it. And I hitchhiked right into the middle of it.
Jeez Louise. God. Ooh, 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 ooh. And there were two things here that are going to be kind of wishy-washy here, or actually three questions. Did you end up on Hickory at a point in time with the Marine Corps?
Well, lots of things happen when you piss off the sergeant major.
Oh, Lord.
I was up there for 2 weeks with one other guy, another staff sergeant. I can't remember his name either. So he and I are sitting there, and the Marines get really busy one morning and left. And Pete ain't no dummy. So Pete and the other guy left with him. And that even more pissed off the sergeant major. I said, "Sergeant Major, I'm sorry, but the two of us, we're not going to hold that by ourselves."
2 weeks as punishment on Hickory.
Well, it would have been longer if the Marines would have stayed.
Heard a few guys from Khartoum talking about getting punished and sent up to Leghorn. It's amazing they use that as a punishment for you guys. And then I thought it was because we have the photo. Could you tell us a little bit about your brother, and then the famous mix-up in the team history books of it being labeled as you? And you can see his 173rd Airborne patch. But could you tell us about your brother a little bit?
So my brother is 5.5 years younger. Conscientious objector, refused to carry a weapon. Ended up in the 173rd, working in their S3. And he told them at Fort Bragg, he was working in division headquarters at Fort Bragg. He said, look, my brother's on orders for Vietnam. Said, is he there? Said, no, he's on orders. Said, shut up and get on the bus, boy. So he went to Vietnam. He was there for 10 months with the 173rd. I was on orders, and I got there, and they said, you're going so-and-so. No, I'm not. What do you mean? I said, I'm going home. My brother's here, and I'm a sole survivor. Oh, well, what can we do for you, Sergeant Armstrong? I said, well, you're going to sign us both together. So they took him from the 173rd and sent him to CCN in the headquarters, and me on New Jersey.
Holy cow! That's too cool. That, I mean, you standing up, and then also your brother being able to do that, you being on the compound with your brother at the same time. Did y'all get to, I mean, I know you're both busy, but did y'all at least get to see each other on a regular basis?
Almost daily. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Wow. And you said he went to the S3 shop?
He was in the S3 at the 173rd. He was in the S1 at CCN.
And what is S1 for us?
That's admin.
Admin. Okay.
Yep.
I don't have all of my S's down pat yet, so I have to make sure.
Admin, Intel, Ops, and Logistics. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I like that. Okay. Thank you for that. Learning something new every time here. Okay. And now I think I jumped over it. But as we're starting to get towards, I think, towards the end of Vietnam here, you did help out, or were the liaison, as it was known, to the 219th King Bees, correct?
Yes. Awesome.
And what exactly would that entail?
I think that was my punishment for leaving Hickory. So we had both the 219 King Bees, and we had a Vietnamese recon bird, looked like a Piper Cub, but it was a little bit different squadron. I don't remember what number they were, but they flew Covey for us as well as the Air Force. So I was just out there with them, and plus we had a lot of, I guess technically I was the airfield NCO. We had a lot of 130s and 123s and C-47s coming in and out, supporting us. So I would meet them and get the teams in and out.
Wow.
And by then, I was well into my 4th tour and spoke Vietnamese pretty well. So it was an asset to have me out there. There was myself and one guy from the S4, and we had an S4 warehouse out there, and that's where we lived, in the warehouse. And as the stuff came and went, we made sure it got secured and distributed and all that.
And there he thinks he's punishing you, and you speak fluent Vietnamese and actually enjoy hanging out with the King Bee guys. So,
and
jokes on you.
And they gave me a 3/4 ton truck and a pass that said I could do anything, go any place, and do whatever I wanted to. And I got married to a Vietnamese, and I was actually living downtown.
Wow, man, I mean, all SOG stories are interesting, but I got to tell you, sir, you have are taking the cake here with quite interesting story all around, and especially in your SOG parameters here. Wow. And I didn't even know that was a thing until I spoke to you and saw it in one of the history books of the King Bee liaison. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
and
where
what,
I first met Nguyen Key. He
oh,
visited one day.
wow. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I met him there briefly. And again, my Vietnamese friend from back in 1963, he joined SOG and he got some, I think he was on Kansas for a little bit, but he got some special trainings. And Key's family and my friend's family were neighbor families in Hanoi from back in the 50s. So my friend actually ended up becoming Key's bodyguard. And so I'd already met Key once, but because of my friend, I met him several more times and we truly became friends and visited with him in the US after the war, visited with him in Vietnam after the war, after he moved back to Vietnam, and saw him not long before he passed away of a heart attack in Malaysia.
Oh, wow. And was Colonel Key the King Bee pilot? I mean, not the King Bee pilot, the A1 Skyraider pilot?
Yeah, initially he was a special ops C-47 pilot.
Whoa. Wow.
He had flown missions into North Vietnam.
Man, what a guy. Okay, there we go. I knew, I was about to say, I recognized him from his famous
Purple
mustache.
scarf, yeah, and mustache, yeah.
Oh, man, of course it's going to make it tiny, but there he is nonetheless.
Yeah.
Wow, what a guy. Hey, made it to 81. Man, you meeting, seeing, and crossing paths with all these Vietnamese specialties and dignitaries and leaders is just outstanding. Wow. So with this winding down, recon on 3 different teams, you're a liaison with the King Bees. You've been to the liaison bureau. What exactly is next before you call it a career for time in Vietnam?
So I left CCN and extended, but the group sergeant major said you cannot extend in special forces. If you're trying to extend in special forces, you've got something going on.
What?
So, yeah, that was a quote from him. I don't remember which which guy it was at the time.
You're fine.
But I guess he truly believed that. But so
Like black marketeering stuff, you mean?
yeah,
Like, oh
yeah.
my God.
So instead of extending, I had to agree to start a new tour. So that was 5th tour, and I had to do it in a different unit. So there was an opening at SOG headquarters in the Black PSYOPs office, and I became the ops sergeant for that office. It was just a very small office, 2 officers, myself, and a clerk, and that was probably the most interesting work I did in Vietnam. And it was, none of the operations belonged to the Army. They all belonged to alphabets.
Ooh.
And to the best of my knowledge, they're still all classified.
Wow. So see, there is still some stuff in SOG that's classified. So when you hear people say, oh, it's all declassified, not true.
No.
Not true.
And to the best of my knowledge, none of this has been leaked. I've never read anything about it.
Wow. That's quite the feat as well. That this stuff has not so much as a name of a project or anything leaked out, much less specific, shall we say. I mean, that's wild.
So I did that for almost a year. A lot of it was in civilian clothes. Ran all over the country.
That was my question. Where were you working? All over the country.
I was working out of SOG headquarters on Pasteur Street, And then I went up to Op 35 to be the desk NCO for CCN. And while I was up there, Dan Shungle was the, I don't know if he was the deputy or the chief of Op 35, but he told me he put me in for a commission. And I guess Shungle was the chief and Larry Truck was the deputy. He was also a lieutenant colonel. So I was working there, and Trap ran into some trouble, and he got relieved and asked me to drive him to the airport to get on the airplane to go home, which I did. I liked him, and I've known him for several years. And the next day, I got relieved.
Oh,
Because I had driven Trap to the airport. That was the only reason. There was never any explanation as to what he had done. And so I got sent out to MACV headquarters. I was almost at the end of my tour to out process, and I don't know, they had me doing something out there while I was waiting to out process. I'd only been there about 10 days, and some Spec 4 says, "Hey, Sarge, did you know you're going to get commissioned at the end of the month?" Nope, I did not. So they sent me back to SOG headquarters, and on the 30th of April, 71, Sadler and Pinkerton, and I don't know if either of them knew that I'd been relieved out of Op 35 or what, but they commissioned me, smiled, and patted me on the butt, and 5 days later, I left Vietnam.
wow. What a way to leave Vietnam, though, I should say.
And had I not been commissioned in Vietnam, the commission could not follow me home. That was one of the stipulations. Westmoreland's field commissioning program.
The commissioning and the reduction and all of that is such a cluster. I mean, wow, that's ridiculous. Wow. So you get commissioned, you go home, and I guess
went to the basic course at Fort Benning. While at the basic course, went to Jump Master School, then to Civil Affairs School, then to Red Eye Missile School. So it took 10 months before I got to Panama. And by the time I got there, they had already decided that they were not going to continue my commission. I was only going to be there for 2 years. And of course, I got in all the trouble there in Panama. So the guy that I told you sent me to OCS from Da Nang as a captain, we had stayed in touch through the years. And I got a letter from him. He said, "Look, I understand you got to revert back or get out. I'm going to the Pentagon. I'm being reassigned to the Pentagon. And I'll be happy to help you do whatever you want to do." So I wrote him back and said, "I want to stay in." And I've heard that the Army is now transitioning infantry officers to shortages to try to fill up some of these other combat support branches. I was in Panama. He said, "Meet me at such and such entrance to the Pentagon on such and such a day." And this was in March, and I was supposed to get out of the Army on the 30th of April. So technically I went AWOL from Panama because I put in for leave, they approved it, and then my company commander went to the field and left orders for me to join him in the field and not go on leave. So I went on leave, and and I got to the Pentagon, and Colonel Wilson, on the 06 list by now, walks me into the AG branch chief's office and said, "Pete Walker, this is Pete Armstrong, and he'd like to be an AG officer." And I didn't really want to be, but it beat the hell out of leaving the Army after 12 years. So Wilson calls in Betty Lou, his secretary, and says, "Make him an AG officer." And Betty Lou turns around and takes my file and starts typing and says, "What else can I do for you, Pete?" I said, "Well, I'm supposed to ETS here in 5 weeks." And he called her back and said, "Make him an indefinite AG officer." So I went back to Panama wearing AG branch instead of infantry branch. Came home to the 82nd wearing AG branch. And my boss from the 82nd went to DC to be the secretary to the vice chief of the Army.
Whoa.
And we got along well together, a guy by the name of Eisenbarth. And as he was leaving, cordial. He really liked my wife, little Vietnamese girl. So I called him up one day and I said, "Look, I'd really like to go back to infantry." So I'm sitting there in the 82nd AG section one day, and the next day I'm down in the 1st Brigade of the 82nd as an infantry officer again.
Holy cow.
I did that for 2 more years at Bragg. Advanced course, 15 months on the DMZ in Korea, came back into SF and never left.
There's a college degree in there somewhere, though, isn't there?
Well, that's the way I was able to stay on active duty. I got to Panama. I'd been going to night school. So, well, actually, when I was assigned one place, I was able to go to, I was working half night, half day. So I was able to go to school afternoon and evening and got my bachelor, my first year. I went to classes in Vietnam at night and got my second year. Got to Panama and Florida State, looked at my record and looked at all the schooling I'd been to in the Army. They gave me my third year. So in 13 months in Panama, I managed to go to school 5 nights a week and Saturdays and get my graduate. And when I took that up to the Pentagon and Colonel Wilson introduced me.
Wow, man. I mean, that's some tough stuff. That's commendable, doing all of that and still being able to cut it through night school like that. My Lord, man. Wow.
And the guys at Da Nang, where I was going to night school, University of Maryland had a program down at the First Logistics, which is 4 or 5 miles down the road from us. If I was in garrison, I'd be in class at night. If I was not in class, he knew I was in the field someplace. And very understanding.
Wow, man, that's awesome. I love hearing that. That's really, really cool. And you mentioned a stint on the DMZ. What time frame was that?
I got there January 77, left in March of 78. That time frame was eyeball to eyeball, guns loaded. It was not a pleasant period on the DMZ. There were deaths reported.
Is this the was this around, and I'm terrible with dates, around that time when the tree cutting incident had occurred?
That happened in August. I got there in January.
Whoa.
My first sergeant was an SF medic originally, and then became a SF O&I guy. He actually treated the 2 guys that got wounded.
Holy cow.
The battalion's mission was response to problems on the DMZ at JSA. So when that happened in August, the battalion responded.
Jeez, that is another potential incident of World War III kicking off right there that you
Absolutely.
were a step away from.
More nukes in the air. And it took them 20 years, but they finally decided that that was a combat tour as well.
oh,
It was
did
too
they?
late to get, yeah, it was too late to get combat pay for it, but I'm authorized to wear Indian head combat patch if I want to. And I would have earned the CIB had I not already had it. I earned the CIB 6 different times, but only wear first award.
Jeez, man. And you mentioned, and we're getting ready to wrap up here. I'm not going to hold you too much longer. You mentioned, did you say you were an tongue tie, SFAS officer for a while?
The definition of that, I'm sorry. SF.
No, okay. You went back to SF as an officer for the 7th and 5th group. Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. And was that detachment commander in the 7th and a company commander in the 5th?
Yes.
Wow.
Actually, I got back to Fort Bragg just as Delta was forming.
Oh.
And I had been Charlie Beckwith's op sergeant once upon a time when I was a staff sergeant. And he wanted me to join Delta. And I said, I'd love to, but I want SF time as an officer. So I went down and I commanded A725, 1st Battalion of the 7th, and then spent almost a year doing that. Went up to the S3 shop as the assistant S3 in the 7th for another year. Then went over to 5th group in 2nd of the 5th in the 3 shop for a little bit until I took over company command of Charlie 25. And I had that for 18 months. And then I left Bragg Christmas Eve of 1981, never to return again, except on TDY.
Wow. Wow. That little nugget you throw in there on us about Mr. Beckwith and Delta, that's pretty cool. That's wow. I mean, you right there as they're starting it up down at the armory and everything. That's really, really cool. Really cool. And I know, you stayed in till Desert Storm. You get to the major, well, before that major. When along your line, you mentioned in a Tilt's interview in passing, but you were part of the 82nd Battle Group, and y'all had the Davy Crockett systems.
Well, that's why I had the TS clearance, because the battle group in 1960, early 60s, was called the Pentomic Division. We had 5 battle groups. It was a huge division. Even the 82nd is a rather light division. We were huge. Each battle group had 7 companies and was commanded by a full colonel. And it had a headquarters company, 5 rifle companies, and a heavy mortar battery. And in the heavy mortar battery, we had the Davy Crockett, which was a jeep-mounted nuclear weapon. Little weapon, big weapon. The difference being the burst area, and when you fired the big weapon, you did not come home.
Man, oh man. I can only imagine what it was like getting guys and training for that, and that job, the stress of knowing if y'all are called into duty, it's going to be a bad day
Yep.
with that system for everybody, not just y'all.
And that's why we deployed to Florida in response to the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Jeez, that'll give you nightmares and panic attacks if you really get dwelling on that. Wow. And to wrap it up, because I could keep going on here. Well, you end up going. You're in during Desert Storm, and I believe you're still Special Forces in Desert Storm. Is that correct?
Yes, it was on each of the combatant commands at that time had what they called an ASOC, an Army Special Operations Support Command, SOSC. And the one in Germany that supported 10th Group had already transformed a bit in its mission and look, but the rest of them were still intact. So in Desert Storm, our mission was to support special ops with personnel and logistics. And the SOC, the Special Operations Command, took care of the intel and operations. So we proved the concept. And immediately after Desert Storm, then the SOCs were, the jointness of the military was so strong that they absorbed all of those special ops support commands into the joint side of the house. So that part of the Army went away and became joint.
So yeah, wow. I mean, that's amazing. You're there seeing through Vietnam, nothing's conglomerated and together, so to speak. There's SINPAC and all the organizations, but you're seeing the special SOCOM, you're seeing JSOC, you're seeing all of this coming down the pike
Yep.
as your career is beginning to wind down. What was your rank in Desert Storm?
I was a senior lieutenant colonel, so I was a deputy 5th SOSIC commander. The detachment moved from from Atlanta to Desert Storm. I joined them in Desert Storm as an individual replacement, became the deputy. They moved back in April after the war was over, but we still had a mission to do. So they left me and about 5 of the people there, and I stayed through about mid-December and finally came home in December of 91. And when I came home, the deputy's position no longer existed except in combat. So when I came home, I got reassigned to the FORCECOM J3 as a current ops officer and did that for a couple of months until I retired.
Wow. I mean, what a illustrious career. I mean, geez, Louise. What was the decision? What finally decided to say, hey, I've done enough missions. It's time to hang the gun belt up for a while or for good.
Yeah, there were several, to be quite honest. One was I was 49 years old.
Mm.
And I was old, especially to be a special ops guy.
Yeah.
And I just had so much fun, I didn't need to have any more. My wife's boyfriend didn't like me at all. While I was at Desert Storm, she had converted everything that I had amassed in 30 years and stolen it.
Jeez.
General Sudduth at Fort Bragg had dictated that everybody in the Army in special ops worldwide would pass the PT test at the 18-year-old Ranger level.
Oh.
And I said, I ain't even going to try. And the Army was just getting stupid. They told me I needed to take a PT test at Fort McPherson. So I pulled out this card and I said, I just took one 5 months ago. Oh, that doesn't count. You didn't have to take that. Nobody told you to. Okay, stupid, you know. I mean, it just got, but I got to tell you that when I went to Desert Storm, I got in a little bit of trouble in Desert Storm because they made one big parachute jump there. and I made the parachute jump.
Oh,
And a guy that I had known for a long time, a general officer by Desert Storm, said, Pete, the commander said nobody in the command would make that jump. I said, sir, I heard that. I have never been assigned here. I was at Fort Lee teaching, and they told me to take my records and go to Fort Benning. And Fort Benning told me to get on an airplane. Nobody has cut any orders. So I figure if they're treating a lieutenant colonel like that, what are they doing to the privates?
oh, mm.
And I just, and the work on the staff was stupid work.
God.
The first piece of paper that hit my desk in January was a request from a division commander. And the decision had already been made by Congress as to his request. The Force Com commander says, we never say no to a commander. That piece of paper went up and down stairs 7 times. I never said no, but I couldn't say yes either. So it just kept going up and down. And it was the last piece of paper I saw on my desk when I retired. And I had no desire to do that.
No, that not after all you've done. I mean, that sounds like an utter nightmare, to be honest with you. I mean, you're too old for that. You've been through too much to be playing nonsense games with paper and all that. That's craziness. Yeah. Jeez. And that's a shame with the illustrious career that's the way you're treated and ended. That's just a malarkey.
But
wow.
they held a nice retirement ceremony, so it was okay.
Well, at least they did that correctly for you. What was the official day that you were done, that you were officially a civilian again?
Well, I walked off the parade field, I think it was 28 May, and I had a bunch of leave. So 31 July is when it became effective.
Wow.
92.
1992.
30 years, 6 months, and 2 days.
30 years, 62, 92. I mean, wow, what a career, sir.
And had I been selected for full colonel, that would have required another 5 years at least. And
that's a long time.
Yeah.
Especially doing stuff you don't like.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's so many minute stuff. We could have kept going on and all that, but we're at 2.5 hours now, and as I said, I'm not going to hold you and turn it into a marathon. But I would ask on down the line if you would ever be open to coming back to talk more about a little bit about Vietnam and SOG, or even post SOG. Everybody's already saying they'd love to see you again sometime, because it's been fantastic. Quite the history lesson.
Well, I would not mind doing that. And one part we didn't cover, you talked about Carpenter. I went back on the ground in 2013 to where we left him. And just in October of last year, I visited the detachment in Hanoi that's looking for him. So I'm still tied in.
Last year, so as of last year, you've been checking.
Yes, wow. They contacted me. They told me once that they had closed the case and then they've reopened it. So,
boy, that do you ever see yourself, if you ever got news about a site located, would you ever see yourself going back, or are you done traveling and going to that particular neck of the woods?
Oh, I'm not done traveling at all. I had back surgery, as many parachute veterans end up having. I had back surgery in June, and doctor cleared me in August, and I've been on 3 overseas trips to 15 different countries since August.
I know it seems like the past month or two I was texting with you. You were either on the way somewhere or getting back from somewhere, and it's you were a traveling man, that's for sure. And you got some great photos that you share on social media of all your travels, which is just outstanding. We would absolutely love to have you back one day. Maybe we can narrow something down, a subject in your illustrious career that we can do a deep dive on, or something that you may want to cover in particular. We'd love to have you back one day. So,
Been my pleasure, bud.
Thank you, and everyone, of course, is saying thank you for spending time and sharing with us. And is there anything you would like to say before we close it out for the afternoon?
Well, I hit on it a few minutes ago about having one CIB, having earned it 6 times. If anybody out there has any influence, I truly think I deserve 3. A friend of mine and I in Atlanta have been on a letter writing campaign for years, trying to fix misinterpretations of the military, of the Army's regulations, particularly about the recognition of service and career. But if anybody that can read the English language can read the regulations, clearly I have earned it 3 times. Vietnam, Desert Storm, and Korea. And somehow people who were in the Korean War and then go back for a subsequent tour get 2 CIBs for Korea, and I get 1 for 3 wars.
I'm still surprised at things that they are doing to the Vietnam and Korea guys, and I won't get on my soapbox, but just for instance, the halo jumps, the Army not recognizing y'all's halo jumps or y'all's static line inserts in Laos and Vietnam and Cambodia.
Their interpretation is it has to be a mass jump,
which is defeats the purpose of SOG having a mass jump of men into Laos. But yes, sir, I can't thank you enough for talking to us this evening. It's been outstanding, and I'll stay in touch with you as usual, and maybe here and down the line we can set something up and have you back.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir, and
thanks to the American people.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir, for all